China painting, China painting, China painting, woohoo, it's China painting. Hey guys, welcome to the studio. Today I'm going to be sharing with you how I do China painting. And I've never been traditionally educated in China paints. I just wanted to do it and decided to figure it out myself, and I used a few books that I'll reference in here. I'll actually list them in the materials part, 2 really good books that I used when I was first learning. So what is China paint? China paint is often called overglaze enamel, and it is in powder form. Here's a bunch of little vials. I know, it comes in test tubes, like little mini tubes. So cute. That's part of the love for China paint. Super cute little vials. So China paint is a powder, it's a pigment, and you mix it with a medium, so you have to have some kind of a liquid to mix it to get a paste, and then you apply it to the surface. And it goes over a glazed form. That's why it's called overglaze enamel. And I use clove oil as my medium to mix. 1, because it's readily available. 2, it smells so good. Clove oil, yay! And it's non-toxic. Like clove oil, this is food grade, this is safe, so I don't have to worry about it. Now, China paints, depending on what you buy for a China paint, they could have lead, cadmium, other heavy metals, and things that are toxic. So just when you're buying your China paints, be careful, and if you're going to use it for food, like on the surface of pots that are going to come in contact with food, make sure it's a food-safe China paint. Alright, so what I use my China paints for is to add color to my laser decals that I make from my own drawings. So if you're familiar with my work, you'll be familiar with my soldier image that I like to use. Here is one of my decals. So this is actually the laser decal that I've applied to the surface, but you know, she's just an outline right now, and I want her to have some color. So here's a finished one. Boom! Check that out. Wait, ooh, la 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 la. So nice. Again, closer. Now, so here's the 2. This is before, this is after. And so this is all China paint. Now these here are vintage commercial decals that are the like big cabbage peonies and roses. But all the color of the soldier is China paint. So that's what I'm going to show you guys how to do. And it's actually pretty easy. It's just like painting, like watercoloring. If you can watercolor, you can China paint. It's the same principle, really. Alright, so I have a piece that I've already done a few layers of China paint, and that's why it's like watercolor. It's very transparent. You need to do lots of layers to build up intensity and depth. And I'm going to use one that I've been working on now. It's already been through the kiln twice, 2 layers of China paint. I'm going to put a 3rd layer on. I don't think I need to start with a piece that doesn't have any color to show you how to use the materials, because it's pretty easy. So you start with a glazed plate. Any glazed form will do. It can be one you made, it could be one you bought, it could be one somebody gave you, something you found, whatever. For me, it's one I made. Like, I make my plates, and I basically do everything because I have these control issues. But we're not going to get into that on this video. Alright, so you start with your glazed surface. You need to prep the surface, and what I mean by that is you just got to clean it. Well, I use paper towels, so you'll need a paper towel, and isopropyl rubbing alcohol. So it's really simple. These are everyday items you have floating around your house. So I just get the paper towel wet, and then I wipe the surface clean. This gets rid of any dust, any fingerprints, any grease, you know, any nasty little stuff that's stuck on there that I don't want on there. So I'm going to clean the whole thing. And I will show you the piece that I'm going to work on before I start. And see if you can tell the difference. I don't know if you'll be able to tell, because my layers are so fine and subtle that when I build up intensity, sometimes they'll go in the kiln 5 or 6 times to get the depth. So here's a piece in process. And you can see she's still pretty light. The colors, she does have some color, but the soldier, she's not as dark as, say, this green or these yellows. So I'm going to bring that intensity up. And that's what we're going to do. So to get started, you have to have your China paints. You have to have your medium. I'm using clove oil. You have to have brushes. Any natural hair brush will work. Don't use synthetic. They just don't work as well. The natural hair bristle is the best. It can be squirrel, goat, pony. Any hair that you get is fine. Don't buy really expensive brushes because you're gonna chew through your brush. Like rubbing on the surface is gonna abrade the brush. So you're gonna lose the brush. So don't spend 50 bucks on a brush because it's gonna be destroyed in a few weeks. Get like a nice set of natural hair brushes, and when they all die, just get a new set. And then I'm using a porcelain palette. These are for watercolor, and I don't know if they sell them specifically for China painting, but I got mine at cheapjoes.com. You can get one there too. If you do not have a palette, what I used before was just a little glazed plate. Any glazed porcelain plate or glass tile would work. Alright, so let's mix up some color. I'm going to show you how I do that. And it's really, really easy. It's, you know, mixing a powder and a liquid. Kind of simple. So I'm going to do the green. I'm going to match the green. So I'm using vintage decals on the surface. So my China paints are actually vintage China paints. But there are a lot of companies out there currently making China paints, and I always encourage people to buy what's out there today. Don't really go for the vintage unless you have a specific need for it, because the vintage materials are going to have lead, and they are going to have other things that are toxic in it, and you don't really want to be handling it and breathing it. And you know, I do this because this is part of my work, but I don't suggest it for anybody else. So do as I say, not as I do. Alright, I will start in a little one of my wells here. I am just going to take the powder, and I'm just going to tap a bit out. Shaky, shaky. Tap, 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 tap. Tap, tap, tap. Alright, I'm actually using a color called Persian Green from Rinaldi's, and I don't believe these guys are even in business anymore. I think they're long gone. And I'm going to take a brush, and to start, I'm just going to dip my brush in the clove oil to get it wet. That way it's not going to absorb so much pigmented color once I mix it up. And then I'm just going to pat it dry on that paper towel. And now using an eyedropper, I'm going to go back into my clove oil, and I'm just going to put a drop or two in the well that I put the powder. So you can see in that well, there's the powder and there's the oil. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take some of the oil and drag it over to the powder. I'm dragging them together and mixing these colors to the consistency of toothpaste. I know that sounds weird because you're like, toothpaste for paint, but I'm telling you, that's what you need to get. Any thicker and it's too dry, any thinner it's too wet and streaky. So you need to mix the powder and the oil together. So you can see, this is what I'm getting right here, right in there. That's it. And that's about perfect. You know, if it's too wet, add more China paint. If it's too dry, add a little more clove oil. The other thing you can use if you don't want to use your brushes to mix, and by mixing with my brush, I am shortening its lifespan. Like it's not going to last as long because I'm using it for this other purpose. You could use little things like this. They're sold all over the place as sculpting tools. This is like a little metal spade. You could use a little wooden, there it is. A little like skewer. You could use the back end of a skewer to mix it up. Or a chopstick. Wooden chopsticks would work. Anything that'll mix. Alright, so we're going to take this color, and I know from experience that this color is going to match the decal I'm using, but if you're using a new color, you might want to just do a little test on the side of your palette. So I have my palette here, and I'm going to show you what I mean. So the palette's sitting here, and it's white. This is the great thing about using a white porcelain palette. And I just do a light little brush, and I can see comparatively to this dark green, and be like, yep, that's the same color. That's the one I want. Okay. Ooh, see that? Hit myself. Get too excited. Alright, so I'm just going to go in with the brush and just lightly apply the layer. And I'm just kind of brushing it on a very fine, very thin layer. You don't want any streaking, and you don't want globs. If you go too thick, it can actually crack and flake off in the firing. Don't do that. That's terrible. So I'm just going to apply this to various places around my plate. And I will do this with this color, but of course, you know, there's multi-colors in here. So I'll come back and I'll do this with all the colors that I want to do to bring up intensity. And I don't want streaking, and I don't want it too thick. If you get it too thick and you're having problems with it like globbing up, you can always use a cotton swab, and if you fluff out the end of your cotton swab, you can use it to kind of buff the area a bit, and it helps take some off too. So if you feel like you got too much, you can buff it out. So just barely touching the surface. I'm just dragging this cotton on the surface. Buy good cotton swabs because you don't want them to leave little cottony fibers behind. You know, you want, spend the extra 50 cents and get the real cotton swabs. Get the 100% good cotton swabs. You will thank me. Just go along and paint. Alright, so we're going to fast forward and pretend I painted the whole plate in all the colors, because it's the same idea. It's the same way of application. No matter what color you use, you're just going to mix the color of the China paint with the oil. You're going to use the brush. Now, I do have a lot of brushes, and each one is designated for a different color. These are actually ones I'm currently using in this painting session. So each one will have, oop, that's upside down, a tiny bit of color on it, so I know like that's green, that's blue, that's yellow, that's red, that's purple. So every time I have a painting session, I have enough brushes for each color I'm going to be using. That way I don't have to clean the brush in between painting one plate to another. And usually when I'm doing China painting, it's not just one plate. I'll have a whole bunch behind, like, look behind me. All these have to be done. So I'll work on this and I'll use this particular green on this one, but it might be needed in another plate or another piece. So I'll just then set this to the side after I finished, get the next one and do its green. And then I'll move on to the yellow and do yellow on everybody, and then I'll do the red and blah, 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 so on and so forth. So I've applied a little bit of this blue, green, it's actually a blue-green. It's really, I love this color. It's like, I don't know, it's not a teal. It's too green for that. It's really nice. I'm going to show you again where I applied it, and then we'll talk about cleaning. So if you look right here and right in here, I applied that color so you can see it. Now, on a glossy glazed piece, your China paint is going to go glossy. If you put it on a matte piece, which you can do, it'll be matte. So whatever surface you're applying the China paint to is the surface you're going to end up at the end. So it's kind of like what you start with is what you end up with. But if you go too thick with your China paints, it can go matte. That's just part of the material. All right, now for cleaning. To clean these, I just have the bottle that my eyedropper lives in is just a little glass eyedropper bottle that I got secondhand on eBay. You can buy them all over. It's just a apothecary bottle with an eyedropper. I fill this, well, I'll do it now and I'll show you. So I put about, I would say a quarter, I fill the bottle a quarter of the way up with clove oil. And then I take my brush that I want to clean, I put it in, and I just swish it around. So I'm just swishing the brush around. Ooh, you can see I've cleaned a lot of brushes in here because this is pretty nasty. And then you pull it back out, and then you're going to dab it dry on a paper towel. And if you don't feel like you got all of the China paint out, just do it again. Just swish it around and do it again. And I'm wiping a little bit as I come out so that I don't have too much clove oil. I don't want to waste the clove oil. And then I wipe it. So that's coming out clean now. I don't know if you can see from there, but the brush, she is clean. So this is now nice and clean and ready to go for my next painting session. And I will do that with all my brushes at the end of a painting session, and they'll be ready for me when I do the next one. Now let's talk a bit about firing. So I fire these in an electric kiln that's well ventilated. So if you don't have a kiln vent, you need to just leave all your spy holes open. Just leave them all open. Shut the lid, but open all the spy holes. And then you're going to fire it. I usually do mine on a medium speed because I have a scut. So on a Scott, I do a medium speed to cone 016, so 016. And I'm not sure, I should have looked that up, what 016 is. I will put it in the I'll put it down in the materials list in my description below, what 016 is for temperature wise. But that's what I fire it to. And then when it's cool, I just take it out and it's done. And that's it. That's the end. Like, that's all of it. And that's China painting. It's actually really easy, and I think you guys will like it. You know, my technique is different because I'm filling in a design that I've already drawn, basically. But you can freehand China paint. Roses, flowers, anything that you can paint. I like flowers, that's why I reference those. But anything you could paint on a piece of paper, you could paint on the surface of your piece. Like on a plate, on a vase, you name it, you could paint it. So I think that's all I have. That's all I have for today. There's just a little quick tutorial to give you guys something to start your weekend off. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments below. And if you're not subscribing to me yet, do so. Give me a little thumbs up too, because it's easy and you're right here. Why not just say yay? I like China paint, I like ceramics, and I like Jess. So I'm giving her a thumbs up. All right, guys, you take care, and I'll catch you next time in the studio.